All right. Today, welcome to the Lovecraft eZine show. Today is Sunday, as usual, April 26, 2015, and we do this every Sunday if you happen to be watching for the first time. And of course, you can watch it anytime later, especially if you are watching later, the recorded version. And today, my guest is Dr. Amy Sturgis, who I recently became aware of. Thanks for being on the show, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful.
Well, you have a really, it's amazing because you have a really impressive Lovecraftian, I guess you'd say, resume, and I just only now became aware of you, so I'm really happy to do so. But most importantly, before we get to you, let's talk about Pete.
What? Why?
Why?
Well, because I just think it's cool. I thought it was so cool when that she likes Reanimators so much. So.
Well, actually, go ahead, Amy. Are you there?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. So actually, after I read Amy's review, which was just this, cut me to the heart because she really got everything that I was trying to do with the book. I found out later that she and I share a lot in common. We both published for New York Review of Science Fiction with Dave Hartwell.
Right.
And I've read your work before. I just never had.
Oh,
It took me a few minutes to put this stuff together.
small world.
Yeah. So, thank you so much because that really hit home and I worked hard on that book.
Yeah, I sent Pete these guys an email saying, she's going to be on the show, and he's like, wow, she really likes my book, so that's great. But anyway, I asked you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I just said it was fantastic. Both the content and the way it was put together, the way it was written. And I said this right before we started. I've got the sequel. I've got The Weird Company on my bedside table, so I'm very very much looking forward to reading that. So thank you for a great book.
Thanks.
All right, so if you've not read Reanimators,
Yes.
get it after the show, of course.
Yeah.
So I had asked Amy to kind of fill me in on, her Lovecraftian pedigree, I guess you'd say, and I posted it today. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is a really good place to start, I think. You have a PhD, and could you tell the audience all about that, and then we'll get to the Lovecraft stuff.
Oh, yes. So my PhD I earned at Vanderbilt University, and it's in intellectual history, which is essentially the history of ideas. So that sort of sets a historian up to look at a lot of different things. In my case, I look, for example, a lot at literature, and I also look at some other things, policy and such, depending on what it is I'm studying. But I think particularly science fiction and weird fiction and genre fiction is a great way to take the temperature of the time, particularly because these genre works are both reacting against the dominant culture and showing the anxieties of the age, but also sort of pushing the culture many times toward change and toward different ideas, part of the conversation in a lot of ways. And so I have found over the years that science fiction is a great way not only to learn about science fiction, but also to learn about history in general.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should remind the audience that we are, as usual, giving away free stuff. Matthew Carpenter can't be here today. He's on a camping trip with his kids, I believe, but he's giving away, what the heck was that? Oh, C is for Cthulhu to a live viewer. And the other thing, really cool, the Curious Sea Shanty variants of Innsmouth, Massachusetts by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society, which is really cool, which I think everybody knows. But the really nice giveaway is, I'll let Amy talk about it, is you're doing a course on H.P. Lovecraft coming up, and you want to give away a free course. Can you talk about that a little bit? We're going to give away a free course to a live viewer today, so $175 at the minimum. So
that's right. It's what I'm going to be doing this summer is teaching a course specifically on Lovecraft. I've taught Lovecraft both at the undergraduate and graduate level in a bunch of other courses, but that was always as part of other things in the course. This time I'm actually getting to teach a course that's focused specifically on Lovecraft. It's going to be called Literary Copernicus, the Cosmic Fiction of H.P. Lovecraft. And I'm teaching that through the Mythgard Institute, which is at Signum University. The whole thing is online. So what we do is we meet for twice a week, if people can make it, for live sessions where I both lecture and answer questions and there's conversation. If people can't make it live, they can download that after the fact and watch it at their convenience, either as a video or listen to it as an audio file. And then send me questions in between or make comments if they want to. And that's a 12-week-long course. So that's ultimately then 3 hours a week for 12 weeks that we meet. And then there's also an online discussion forum and such that they can take part in. And so what we're offering here is people are interested, and I think there is a link on your website about the course. We have both auditors who sit in, take part in all the conversations, have access to everything that the degree-seeking students have access to, and we're giving away an auditor's seat tonight. And then also people who are pursuing their master's degrees often take these courses as well, and they have separate written assignments and such to do on top of what everybody else does. But we're hoping that people will be interested in giving us a look. And again, it's something that you can keep up with every week, or you can wait for several weeks and then consume the lectures and discussions like you would a podcast. You can really do it in your own time, as convenience permits and however you'd like to. But there's an interactive component you're welcome to be a part of as much as you'd like, and that's one of the things I find really exciting, because a lot of the questions and comments drive the content. What do people want to talk about and discuss, and what questions do we want to find an answer to all together as a class? So anyway, I'd love to have some of your attendees here and viewers and readers, if they're interested, checking us out.
I'm sorry, just real quick. We got a little bit of feedback, and I think it's calming down, at least it is for me. But my guess is, could you try turning down your speakers just a little bit? Yeah, that's just a common problem. As long as you can still hear us. The other, so you are in fact not teaching this at Miskatonic, is what you're saying. That's the really important question.
Fortunately not. I'm still shooting for that appointment at Miskatonic. It's it's a life dream up there, but every once in a while I do sneak into the library, look in the forbidden books section, try to sneak a tome out, but haven't made it to the faculty there yet. I'm working on it.
Would you settle for Bicester University in England?
That would be a very good second choice. I would take that in a heartbeat.
Rick, sounds like you can hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. If the live audience has questions, I think you know the message board link that's in today's post if it's your first time. Just go to Lovecraft eZine's website, lovecraftzine.com. It's the first post, and it'll have a link there. And if you have any questions for Amy, I will do my best to pass them on. I want to get a little bit, and you guys please feel free to jump in too, but your information that you sent me, first of all, there's some really interesting things that you've written about in the past. Things like the Lovecraft Tolkien connection, and also I see some Lovecraft Sherlock Holmes connections. It looks like as far back as 2005 you published that essay about Lovecraft and Tolkien, which I'd like to ask you about first. And then on, you've done quite a few things here. You did a walking tour in Providence. You designed it, looks like, if I'm understanding that right.
That's right.
Quite a lot of other things, including this course that you're offering. So I guess my first question is, and then after that, please guys feel free to jump in, but Lovecraft and Tolkien, and I read your essay, which is I've linked to from the site as well, and it's available to read online for free. But can you talk about that a little bit? That made a lot of sense to me. It's fascinating.
Glad to hear it. it really came out of asking the question, why are these two authors who've, been dead a while, seeming to have a resurgence of popularity? People are wanting to adapt their works. People are making, dolls and plushies out of their characters and gaming and this sort of thing. And trying to see where they were coming from. And my argument's kind of in two parts. One, that Lovecraft and Tolkien were kind of coming from the same place in a way. If you think about their personal backgrounds, they were contemporaries. Now, their professional lives weren't necessarily contemporary. By the time Tolkien was writing The Hobbit, of course, Lovecraft was dying, so their trajectories professionally did not match up. But in terms of their personal lives, you have people who essentially grew up without a father, grew up in kind of genteel poverty with mothers who were tremendously influential on them, growing up feeling like they belonged in an earlier time, and weren't really at home with a lot of the changes that modernity brought about. And also they had fields that then influenced their work. For example, Tolkien studying languages, that led to the way he wrote. He ended up writing his stuff because he wanted to write the kind of place where the languages he invented could be spoken. And Lovecraft was very interested, of course, in astronomy. And that's really where his whole cosmic turn, that the universe isn't the humanity show. We're bit players, if that, but there's a much bigger story going on out there, comes from his study of astronomy. And I think secondarily also his interest in architecture comes through in his storytelling to a tremendous degree. And so they've got a lot of things they're pulling on that are similar backgrounds. But I think what's most interesting about them is they were asking a lot of the same questions. They were both in love with a certain place and its values and its sense of community and identity, whether that's Tolkien in the countryside, English countryside that was essentially the Shire,
Right.
or Lovecraft with Providence. And both of them saw those worlds under threat. Tolkien saw the factories moving in, the trees being cut down, loud automobiles coming through the fields and this sort of thing. And Lovecraft saw people who didn't share his values coming in. Of course, there's all sorts of baggage there. We know that he had problems with people who didn't look like him or speak his language or have his same ancestry. But he was also genuinely concerned about what happens when you have populations that don't have deep roots in a place. And in that sense, they were both kind of anticipating this modern dilemma of rootlessness, of loss of identity, of who are we and where do we find where we fit, and that sort of thing. And so I think their work really was asking, how do we find what's right and wrong behavior? How do we find our connection to a place and make that last? They were tapping into some concerns that, ironically, even though both of them thought they were men outside of their own times, really actually makes them great examples of their time because they were anticipating some of the great modern dilemmas out there. And so, of course, they came to different conclusions, Tolkien being Catholic and having a great concern about the afterlife and such, and Lovecraft obviously being materialistic and atheistic and not having that and seeing that this was all we had in the world that we're in now. But both of them were looking for answers to similar questions. And so I think maybe the fact that we feel a bit uprooted and threatened and at loose ends today, a time of rapid change again and lots of those things, might be one of the reasons we're interested in going to authors who are dealing with some of the same questions we have. That might be, but one way or the other, I think there's a resonance there. And the place where I'm teaching this course, Mythgard Institute, actually started out focusing on Tolkien. The Tolkien professor, Dr. Corey Olson's the one who started Mythgard Institute. And it's interesting, as I've been teaching my courses and students have been asking for particular courses, they requested this Lovecraft course. And it turns out there's an awful lot of other people who love Tolkien who also love Lovecraft. So I think that's even though I wrote that piece a good decade ago, I think there's still a lot of resonance there between people who are interested in both of those authors.
Right. Interesting how they took that. So many commonalities there, but they took that turn in the road where, as you say in your essay, Tolkien had that hope, religion, life after death, and so forth, and Lovecraft, did not. Guys, I don't want to monopolize the conversation. You guys have questions?
Well, I find it very interesting that both you talk about the parallels, but Tolkien and Lovecraft both lose their fathers at very young ages. They both end up living with other family members,
Right.
and being shaped by aunts and uncles and cousins. Tolkien's first encounter with a created language is his cousin's created language, not something, he gets introduced to that idea through family members, much in the same way that Lovecraft learns from his grandfather to love books and antiquity. So there's a family lesson for both parties.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right.
Which might be something we've lost in, as you put it, modernity. We don't have family lessons anymore. Not really, not like that. So yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, sort of along the same lines of that same topic, though not quite exactly. I was recently rereading The Lord of the Rings, and the what do they call it? The Watcher and the Lake, and they're just what's the passage, Peter, Rick? You guys probably remember, or you, Amy, about things in the earth that are. I think Gandalf is saying it. Things in the earth that are ancient, and even Sauron does not know them. Something to that effect. Some similarities there that at least to my eye. So.
Well, my wife and I we just watched the third Hobbit movie last night, and we watched these giant earth eaters come up out of the ground, and I'm sitting there going, "Those are dolls." This is the Lovecraftian moment in the film, right? You see these giant earthworms come out of the ground, and orcs swarming out of those tunnels. That's a pure Lovecraft moment. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, right.
Kimberly wants to know a couple questions from the audience. Do you consider yourself a Lovecraft scholar? Why or why not?
Oh, I wouldn't pretend to be on the same roster as many people who are self-styled and clearly recognized by the community as Lovecraft scholars, just because Lovecraft is one of several things that I do. I tend to think of myself as sort of a genre scholar because I move back and forth quite a bit in the genre. But I would love to think that I have done some Lovecraft scholarship, and I would love to think that the Lovecraft community is welcoming to me, which it certainly has been. And I know some fantastic Lovecraftian authors, and Kay Schwader, for example, who have been really positive encouragements in my work. So I would love to earn that at some point. At this point, I call myself pretty much a genre scholar, but I do consider myself a Lovecraftian in terms of both the fangirl background, because I've loved Lovecraft for a long time, and also just being involved in the community and such. But I would be very happy if other people would think of me in that way.
You should think about going to Necronomicon at least this year or in the future. Do you know about that?
Yes.
Yeah,
and I would. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hell of a good time.
Anne's the poet laureate this year.
Yes.
You could meet her.
That's right. That's right. Very good taste on the part of the
Very well deserved.
Well, I published her first collection. I've been a staunch advocate of Anne's work for almost 20 years.
Well, we owe you for that. Thank you very much.
No. You owe her. All I did was put it in people's hands. No, it's all her.
Rick, what about you? You look like you got some questions.
Oh, I was just having a comment. We were talking about Lovecraft and Tolkien.
Mm-hmm.
Ramsey Campbell actually sort of connected the two universes in the Franklin paragraphs. Yes, Iran mentioned alongside the great old ones in the same story. I don't know if they really fit together, but
There is that nice mashup there.
Got a couple more questions from the audience, but I don't want to forget to ask one of the most important questions anyway. How did you get interested in Lovecraft and Lovecraftian fiction?
Oh, well, a lot of the good things in my life happened this way. Came from Edgar Allan Poe. Poe's one of my great, both intellectual and personal loves, and in terms of his work, has had a huge impact on my life. And so I really followed. Actually, I came to Lovecraft through supernatural horror and literature, and read that first, and then wanted to read more. And I don't remember if this was the first or just one of the first stories I read, but it was Shadow over Innsmouth, and that I was hooked. And so I immediately went and got the three Arkham House volumes that had, everything in them, and just started at the beginning of one and read all three back to back. And that was it for me. And then I started realizing all the other connections with things that I had loved that were showing up there. The whole New England Gothic. I could see Nathaniel Hawthorne right there, and the Unnameable, and so many other things. And so it's been a good 20 years that since I first found him through Poe. And so another one I owe to Edgar.
Okay, let me get to some questions here. Luke wants to know, as you are preparing for your Lovecraft course, which of his stories are you lingering on more than others? Or, which story has most to teach, if you prefer to look at it that way, he's asking.
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm going back right now and rereading, because I'm assigning Leslie Klinger's new annotated Lovecraft as the class. So we're working from the same thing. And of course, that's not exhaustive. So we're only using really the Arkham cycle there of the stories, although I had to slip two in. I had to slip in Rats in the Walls, and I had to slip in The Shunned House, because I couldn't live with myself if those didn't get in the course too. But I understand why they weren't in that volume. I'm waiting for volume 2 of that. But
he was on the show a couple of months ago. That was there were some questions like that, but it comes down to you got to make certain choices. So.
Right.
He also said there wouldn't be in volume 2, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Hope springs eternal. Shame. But there is an internal logic to what he did there. I mean, I totally see why he did what he did. But so I don't know that I've lingered over any of them more. I do know a lot of my students are already familiar with Call of Cthulhu and Color Out of Space, and some of the works that I routinely teach to begin with. So I am looking at The Mountains of Madness and Caves of Charles Dexter Ward as ones we're going to spend extra time on because of their length, and because I haven't taught those before to an audience like this. So I guess that would be probably my answer. But I also have Rats in the Walls and Shunned House, thinking about how to fit them into what Klinger has already done in a way that makes them make sense to the Arkham cycle. Besides, the professor just wanted them in here. There's logic for why I want those two in there. So, but I have an awful lot of favorites showing up in this class. So I'm trying to.
Is that how is that what your mindset was? Is that how you go about teaching a course like this? Do you kind of start from the stories and work your way outward, or are you more starting from themes and going to the stories, or something different?
Oh, that's a good question. It really depends on I teach two kinds of courses, really. One is the sort of grand narrative. I wouldn't say survey, but it's getting a big picture of a thing. So, for example, the second half of science fiction is what I just finished teaching, and that was specifically from the new wave to the present day. So you had a nice, 50-some year split there, and there I was looking specifically at themes, and then matching readings to the themes. But then I also do some really close study courses, and the most recent of those is my course called Sherlock Science and Ratiocination, where we look at how C. Auguste Dupin becomes Sherlock Holmes, and those I really started with the readings, and then figured out what I wanted to do there. And this course is more led by the readings. There are themes I want to talk about, but I'm letting the readings decide when I talk about those themes, and not the other way around.
When you do your Sherlock Holmes class, do you also go into Émile Gaboriau, the French writer?
We do talk about him, yes. We don't do a reading, but he is part of the setup for all of that. Good catch there. Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of foundation stuff in terms of setting up the great detective and giving him context. And Neil does show up there. So.
Shane Ivey is watching and wants to tell you that he says hi. Says you guys worked together about 5 years ago or so.
Oh my goodness. Yes, Revolution Science Fiction. Awesome,
yeah,
thank you.
He's right in here, yeah, exactly. Ronald wants to know, question about the course. Do the auditing students have access to the assignments that the master students have?
Yes, they do. All of the assignments are posted, and so they can see what the paper assignments are, and they can also see the final exam as well. All the questions and everything there, which is the final exam is essays.
So essentially, as you told me before the show, it's the same course. There's a $175 price and a $575 price, but essentially the same course. It's just whether you're pursuing your master's or not on the higher price. If you simply want the knowledge and to take the class, it's $175.
That's right.
Okay,
and
I have that right.
The discussions that happen in the course, both during my lectures with me and with the other class members, and also in our discussion forum, mix the auditors and the master's students. So they're talking to each other too. So there's no division there.
Okay, that's awesome. John DeLauder wants to know, is there a synopsis available for the class if one cannot attend?
Yes, in terms of the what we're covering each week, or
I'm not quite sure what he means. I'm guessing John means what you're covering and so forth.
There is a detailed outline of what will be covered. I also usually post my PowerPoints, which I only use really for quotes and for dates and such. I post those, and then if you can't attend, you do have, but you're an auditor, for example, you have the option to download the video or download the audio and keep them and consume them whenever you want. So you can actually, next best thing to being there, you can see them on your
own. Guys, if you have any questions, jump in.
When you got interested in Lovecraft, how did you deal with all these references to other writers like Clark Ashton Smith? Did you start to read them as well?
I started a list, yes, exactly, and artists too, when he talks about the paintings and such, right? Describing the landscapes, not even so-and-so could have done that. I made a list of the references there and found some, and that's actually how I found Clark Ashton Smith, for example, was through Lovecraft. But I had also, when I came to Lovecraft, I had already read supernatural horror and literature, so I'd also gotten some good reading recommendations from Lovecraft before I got there. So for example, Robert W. Chambers and Algernon Blackwood, people like that. So.
Had you read any of those? How soon after did you begin to read any of those people?
Quite soon. I had read some of them, like M.R. James, for example, I had already read. But those that I hadn't, I tried to get to pretty quickly, and found several of the great collections that are, Lovecraft and others that were published. So then I would go read those and read the ones that were his contemporaries as well. That happened almost immediately after I finished my first stint in Lovecraft. But fortunately, I had read some of them, so I did know a few of those. Ambrose Bierce, for example, too, another that I'd come across.
Whether you're reading Chambers or Lovecraft, you need Bierce. It's the foundation. It's all built on. You mentioned
Right.
Poe, and I would agree. Poe's absolutely a quintessential piece, but if we're going to go to cosmicism, you can't get to Lovecraft or Chambers without Bierce. He's the cornerstone of the building.
No, you're quite right.
Now, when you began to read, Blackwood and Machen and Chambers and whatnot, did you fancy any of them? Did you find any of them wonderful and others you didn't cotton to?
Oh yes. I am first and foremost a science fiction person, and so I particularly appreciated those who were of a more science fictional bent, and I.
Yeah, plus she told me she doesn't like Chambers at all. She's vehement.
Well, she just said she loves science fiction, so
I
she's a
just
retailer of Reputations fan.
Yes. The Yellow
Sorry,
Sign is a huge favorite of mine. Actually, I love the whole. I mean, obviously, you're the King in Yellow guy, but how fantastic all this stuff is.
Yeah,
But no, I love.
So they tell me. So they tell me.
I'm not as big as, for example, a Howard person, but I can, from a history standpoint, I see how it all connects, and I appreciate it from that standpoint, even if it doesn't particularly float my boat in the same way that some of his other contemporaries might. But.
Yeah, no, that's well.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, no, I was just going to say a lot of Howard, in my mind, but I'm of an age.
Yes, you are.
Same age as me.
Right. I mean, my generation is going off to college, and it's the post-war generation. So a lot of the factors you talked about, men who went to war and did not come home, and families that were being raised without a parent, that's us. And a lot of what's going on college campuses is trickling down to those younger and brothers and sisters. What are they're listening to new music. Their hair's longer. They're experimenting with sexuality and drugs, and we want to be cool with our older brothers and sisters. One of the things we could get our hands on, maybe you couldn't get your hands on weed or a young woman, but you sure could get your hands on Howard and Tolkien and Lovecraft. They were in the bookstores. They were being read on the campuses. So here was our older brothers and sisters who we thought were cooler than hell saying, Howard's great, Tolkien's great, Lovecraft's great.
Right.
That stuff was handed down. And important because it was deemed cool. I still remember being 12 and seeing a Frodo button on what I thought was a really cool young guy, who was just as cool as anybody in the Beatles. And I didn't know what a Frodo was. But he was cool, and that was the only word he was walking around with. And I was hot to find out what a Frodo was. So that's part of where this popularity, because my generation is now, we're the old guys. We sort of have the keys to the kingdom. And we just brought along our childhood dreams. This stuff inhabits our teenage years. It helped in some ways in a little, some ways a lot, but it helped make us who we are. And we just continue to explore it. I think that's a key to why it continues to expand, because each generation of disciples has brought it along. Well, we're the baby boomers. We're the biggest generation. I think we have disseminated it more only in some ways because of our size. I mean, those aren't the only factors, but I think they are contributing factors.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Before I forget, Amy, Pete had a family thing, but he wanted to. I'll just read what he wrote to me. Please let Dr. Sturgis know how much I appreciate her work. He had to go for a family thing, but anyway, you were saying.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rollins. Appreciate it.
And that was just the short version. Pete will be sending an armored car full of gold. He thinks you walked on water.
Well, the feeling's mutual, so it's a thrill to be here. Thank you.
Wait a minute, are we going to have to talk with his ego again? Oh, man.
What you were saying there reminded me of a book that came out not too long ago, just in the last couple of years, called As If. It's an intellectual history of the first sort of pre-virtual communities, or the pre-virtual reality. And the author there, and what's his last name? Saylor, I believe, was looking at the Sherlock Holmes, H.P. Lovecraft, and J.R.R. Tolkien families, essentially, and how that cool factor that you were talking about, and that handing things down from one, slightly older generation to slightly a younger generation there, fed a lot of the interactivity and the desire to create community. The people weren't just happy reading the stuff. They read the stuff and then they wanted to make more of it, or they wanted to talk to other people who were reading it, or dressing up, or whatever it was.
You can equate this to, let's say, the Beatles. You heard all this stuff on AM radio, and every kid in America wanted to play a guitar, and we were all in garage bands. We wanted to emulate what we saw was cool. These were vehicles to freedom. These were vehicles to discovery. And again, whether it's whatever type of discovery and freedom you want to embrace, be it sexual or whatever, in the 60s, we were all looking to stretch out, and these books were vehicles for that. Part of it's the cool factor. I want to be like them. They're doing new, interesting things. So if that's what they're reading, that's part of their journey of discovery. And we all were embracing this journey of discovery. All right. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
You had mentioned weird fiction a couple of times. So in addition to the masters, Blackwood, Mock, whatever, I assume you can keep up with what's going on in contemporary. So it seems like, most of us feel we're in a weird fiction renaissance.
Yeah.
Right.
Be it Laird Barron, Caitlin Kiernan, and we can list names for the next hour,
Joe froze.
Weird fiction?
There he is. Go ahead, you froze for a second.
I'm sorry, I missed just the very end of that, yes.
Oh, I was just saying, do you read much contemporary weird fiction?
I do, particularly when it crosses over a bit with SF. It's in that world. One of the things I do, I'm one of the writers and voices that's on the team of our fearless leader, Tony C. Smith. We do Starship Sofa, the podcast.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah.
And we do cover Jeff Vandermeers, Roland, and Ann Vandermeers, and Caitlin Tiernan, and I like Dale Bailey, folks like that. So we try to keep up with that, and I've had the good fortune even to get to narrate some of it. F. Paul Wilson, The Barons, I got to narrate his story for when we ran it on Starship Sofa. So yeah, I'm very interested in what's happening in terms of this Renaissance, because I agree with you. I think it's a new, and Weird Tales and how Weird Tales has had its amazing story there. So yeah, I would say I'm trying very much to keep up with it, and particularly how it blends over the sort of blurred genre lines, as it always has. I mean, that's part of the weird.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If we go back to its roots, even if we want to say that it sort of begins in the 1890s with ghost stories and Gothic, right from its inception, it's been incorporating whatever sits at its elbow that it finds of interest. I think that's key to the whole maturation process. That'll never go away.
Yeah, and Amy, you keep saying that you're really interested in science fiction. I'd like to ask you, when it comes to Lovecraft, what fascinates you about his themes? I get a different answer every time I ask this question. So.
It's a really good question. I do love the weird, if I can use that after we've just been talking about weird fiction, juxtaposition he has between this cosmic vision where we are so insignificant and we're there at the mercy of forces that don't care about us, and ultimately the most we can hope for is to be a blip on the radar, and that's asking a lot, versus his protagonists who genuinely want to know, and they don't do the wrong thing. They don't go into the weird little shop and buy a mummy's foot and then go home and wonder why bad things are happening to them. Don't buy a mummy's foot, right? But these people are just, in case of Color Out of Space, they're just at home trying to take care of business, or they just rent the wrong room, or they travel through the wrong town. But once they realize something's going on, they want to know. And I think there's this noble thrust in Lovecraft's work of at least admiring that these characters who are going to either meet a terrible end or lose their minds or what have you, when they find out, are still trying to, in the midst of the fact that really their entire quest for knowledge is as pointless as we are, really unimportant as we are. Yet there's this nobility in these characters. I really appreciate that, and the fact that you can sit all night with your flamethrower in the basement of the shunned house, and we can appreciate why they're doing that, even though they're both not going to come out alive. I appreciate the, I'm not going to tell you a story that's going to make you happy. You're going to have to go someplace else for that. I'm going to tell you what I think is true that comes out of Lovecraft. And so the cosmic vision, it's not about us, so get over yourself and all the rest of us too. I appreciate that, but I also appreciate the fact that doesn't keep him from appreciating those sensitive, inquisitive, curious questers who just want to know.
Yeah, Carl Sagan said something along those lines of the truth. Knowing the truth is always better than not knowing. Of course, he wasn't talking about Lovecraft; he was talking about reality. But that's what drives some of these protagonists. Sorry, is they're just curious. which is not a bad thing. We evolved to be curious, but so. I accidentally skipped a question by Thomas Raleigh, but going back up, he says, since Lovecraft loved Providence so much, why do so many of his works focus on Massachusetts? It seems he was far more familiar with Essex and Middlesex counties. How many of his works focus on Providence? What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, good question. Well, of course, we know that Lovecraft wasn't the recluse the popular culture paints him to be. He went up and down and took very careful notes of where he went. His longest work is actually his travels in South Carolina. So he was a traveler and a student of the places he traveled, even though he loved Providence so much. But I would say that part of what let me preface this by saying I'm a historian, which also means that I don't. I would prefer to go study for a week and come back with an answer, as opposed to answer off the top of my head.
Right.
But my off the top of my head answer would be he's also pulling from a really strong New England Gothic tradition, and I think he was fascinated by the whole Salem area and Marblehead area for what it represented symbolically, as well as its architecture and its history and such. And so when he was trying to create his doppelganger place of Arkham, and to create some place to put Miskatonic University, that was just too good of an opportunity to miss. And he was also dedicated enough that he did his research, and he's going to set a place based on a real town. He was also going to know all the environs and all the history and such. It was sort of a mutually reinforcing thing. He knew the history, so that made sense as a place, and then also once choosing the place, he also knew the history very, very well. Rather than just have the fictional version of Providence, have something that has that extra lineage of horror and that extra lineage of guilt and repression and all the things he didn't like about Puritans by going there, without then having to turn that same critical eye toward Providence. That would be my off the top of my head answer.
Yeah.
And I think part of that would also be just geography itself. I mean, as someone who spent most of my adult life in upstate New York and Vermont and western Massachusetts, as a human being, here we are sitting at our campfire in the dark. And out beyond the limits of that light are things to be feared. And when you are in upstate New York, in western Vermont, the land itself, which would be, if Providence is his campfire, when he looks into the darkness beyond, when he's stretching out, trying to discover, into that void, the thick, heavy pine, what it's like at night, the rolling valleys, you know, these are not Iowa cornfields. These are not, you know.
Hey, I tell you from experience, they're pretty scary too. But
yeah, well, I know that. I know that, Mr. King. We'll get to you later. These are perfect environments. I mean,
yeah.
There's parts of western Massachusetts and upstate New York and Vermont where if you step off the path, in less than 5 minutes, you'll be in a place where you may never get out of. It all looks the same. It's dark. It's thick. It's ominous. When the sun starts going down, you know, the first word in your mind is "mommy." If you're not holding a shotgun, or
Yeah,
potentially
that's a really good point. You're just beyond the campfire analogy. That's very well put.
That whole environment in New England, outside cities proper, that environment himself, it's the reason his fiction reeks of it. I mean, just absolutely um, her he was searching for. It's so primitive. And
Sure
even you
enough.
speak of science. When you speak of science, and I'm not a scientist, I'm a bumpkin. Okay, I'm your quintessential high school dropout. It's like where's the next party? But these heavy pine forests. If we're going back historically into the record, pine isn't that one of the earliest types of flora? I mean, it's almost primitive simply because these super dense pine forests, as opposed to stately oaks in England or whatever, you know, or palm trees or something. You know, I've never been to England. I've seen all kinds of pictures, wonderful forests, but they don't bear this ominous imprint that you can get walking through, well, a million places I could take you in New England, you know.
Mm.
Just a thought, sorry.
No, that's really good points. It really
Yes.
is.
Analogy. And it sounds like the introduction to Paper in the House. I mean, that's what, because you've got all of these places to go around the world, and the one you really don't want to go to.
Yeah, you touched upon him being a great traveler. He was out in this stuff. He'd been to Vermont. He'd been to Massachusetts. He'd been through this. He'd been on, well, back in that era, those roads that he would have traveled through that country. Even nowadays, if you're driving on a regular Vermont back road, what crushes in on you? I mean, you're driving through these tunnels. That it can be pretty dark.
Yeah, and if you especially imagine you're doing that at night, and I've often had this thought, even not in New England, but in Iowa, uh, just beyond, 10 feet to my right or my left, but more to my right, since I'm driving on the right side of the road, there's this dark foresty area. What if the car broke down? And it's just, there's nothing out here. So, yeah, very well put.
Oh yeah, the canopy. I mean, in springtime, when the legions of frogs are mating and whatnot, under these canopies, the sound you'll get at night is unbelievable. So much there. Sorry.
I got a course question from the audience. Well, two, it looks like. First question is, how much contextualizing of Lovecraft will you do in the course? I noticed that the first week is non-Lovecraft reading. So that's the first question.
Yes. I'm again, because I come at this as a historian as opposed to a literary critic. I do want to put him in his context immediately. So
Right.
my recommended reading to start out is actually the way I came to Lovecraft, which is supernatural horror and literature. And so we're going to look at some choice works. We're going to have The Willows, for example. Certainly, we can go all the way back to Poe, and look at some of the works that influenced him, setting him up. So really, we'll be reading Poe. We'll be reading Lovecraft the very first week. I've got the required readings and the suggested readings on the class page, and he's Supernatural Horror is the place I suggest everyone start. But we'll be looking at several of the authors who influenced him, and then we'll be diving in and then go through the entire new annotated H.P. Lovecraft. And in each of those stories, when we get to them, I'm also going to be talking about the context of each stories in particular, works that were antecedent works that influenced him, and I'm going to be pulling on scholarship by lots of good folks to kind of put together ideas of where the germs of these stories came from, both from his own experience and from other things he was reading, and even history, like in the case of the Shunned House. So there'll be a lot of context, but you're right. We do start actually with Poe, and then by the third week, we're all Lovecraft, all the time. to spend a good 10 weeks with him.
It really does sound like a fascinating course. Okay, so the second question, Luke says, if you had to, do you know this guy? If you had to attend a con in a Lovecraftian costume, who or what would it be?
I bet his last name starts with a B. I think I do know that.
Yes, I had the feeling he knew you.
If I had to go in a Lovecraftian costume, what would I be? That is a great question. I want to be Night God.
Oh,
Cool.
great answer.
Because
awesome.
I like difficult nightmares.
That's a great choice for a Lovecraftian beastie, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A.D. Borman wants to know, will there be any of the letters and essays in the course?
Oh, good question. I'm going to be quoting from some of those and using those in my lectures, and several of his essays, A Defense of Dagon, for example, and Notes on Writing Weird Fiction and such, yes. Whether those will be used in the lectures, and then I'm also going to be linking to them as suggested reading. So absolutely.
I'll bet these two guys know the answer, and maybe even much of my audience, but I don't, so I'll just ask the dumb question anyway, because I think it's interesting. Why did he write In Defense of Dagon? I've not even looked into that.
Letters that came back after Dagon was published, actually, which is a great insight into kind of how he was involved with the amateur press and how this whole community, which it really was a community, people were in conversation with each other about the works. I mean, he started out writing letters about other works that he read, the good things that he liked about the stories and the bad things he didn't like. And so when people questioned how he wrote Dagon, this led him to one of his great pieces saying, this is what I'm attempting to do. And this is why I'm doing it this way.
Were they critical questions like, oh, that was a stupid plot, or were they more like, what were you thinking here, or was it both?
I think it was a combination of both. And the fact that there were ellipses in the stories, he wasn't wrapping things up with the ending people expected. They were waiting for the big save at the end that doesn't come. And so what are you trying to accomplish here? So the story is, it sucks to be us, and nobody cares. And so there he's talking about the way he's writing and what he's trying to get across.
You know, one of the things I find interesting about that story is that the protagonist is only able to bear life because of morphine. One of my favorite fictional characters, I've mentioned on the show before, so these guys know this, but Matthew Scudder, he's a detective written by Lawrence Block. He's friends with this kind of, he's a career criminal. I forget his name right now. And the guy, in one of the books, the guy says something to the effect of, he holds up some whiskey or something, and he goes, I don't know, this is after Matthew Scudder joins AA and stops drinking. He goes, I don't know how you get through life without it softening the edges with this, essentially. I don't know how you get through life without drugs, because he's saying, life is so unbearable at times. And, the same thing with his protagonist in Dagon. Once he runs out of morphine, he can't take it anymore, so he ends his own life. I mean, do you see that the same way?
Very much so. I mean, it's how the human mind just isn't geared to take in the enormity of what he has realized about what's going on under the ocean, and so he's just anesthetizing himself as much as he can. And I think it's really tragic too that he's saying there, don't think I'm just a lush. Don't think that I'm just vice-ridden because that's the way I roll. There's good reason why I turn to this. This is really the last recourse for me. I think that fits very well with what you're saying.
Which, as many people have said, and you as well, in one of the essays I read of yours, that you know, Cthulhu, Dagon, they're all analogies of what he saw the universe in real life as, you know,
Right.
meaningless. So, um, but anyway, yeah. Um, well, if you got time, I got a couple more questions here. Michael Parrish wants to know how would Lovecraft have felt about his mythos being co-opted? Co-opted, I like that, Michael. For such diverse pop culture, he was keen to share his creations and borrow from his inspirations as well, but it seems like that it was so when it was in context. But the cross-pollination with cutesy and cartoony products out there, he's asking your thoughts on that.
Oh, that's a good question. I think first of all he would be utterly bewildered that that people would, you know, wear plushy Cthulhu slippers,
Right.
cutesy little cartoons and such, just because, again, the meaning behind it is quite serious and quite sincere, and to see it kind of, I would assume he might see some of that as kind of trivializing what he was trying to do. But to be fair, he said at the very beginning, when he was writing, that only a very small group of people are going to get it, or going to want to get it. Not just that it was at some, you know, high esoteric level, but that there's only a few people who are interested in this kind of imagination, and the rest either want real life or they want, you know, emotion, whatever it is for emotion's sake, but
Happily
not
ever after, that type of stuff.
exactly. And so I think he would also kind of expect that if it did go mainstream, it wouldn't be in the way that he wrote it, because the mainstream isn't interested. From his perspective, I'm saying. His
Right.
perspective was it was only going to be this small group of people who would want the kind of thing that he produced, and so it would be changed and altered if it ever did become mainstream. It's an interesting question how he would feel about that. Um, you know, hopefully it would have it would have meant royalties for him during his lifetime if it had happened earlier,
Yeah,
so he would have been able to
I,
have more than a half a can of beans for a meal.
yeah.
But I think he would be bewildered and would sort of not connect with it in any meaningful way. It would be fascinating to know that, to see what he would think. And I
On the
think
flip side, though, I think he would be very fascinated with, for lack of a better phrase, those who take it seriously, and authors like Laird Barron and so many others.
oh
You know,
yes,
it was to see what they had done with it.
and even some
Hmm.
people like filmmakers, certain filmmakers, I think he would be very interested in what they did. If he would see the film as a text as opposed to just a movie, how seriously they've taken it too. So in that sense, that would be following the same tradition when he opened up his play box for other people to play in at the time who got it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think a clue as to how he would react was wrote a letter once. I think it was to Robert Barlow, and he was discussing a pulp writer named U.B. Cave, who was a mainstream horror writer who just, oh darn it, the phone's ringing. Oh,
I have a question before we move along, though.
Sure, go ahead, Joe.
We're talking about pop culture Lovecraft, and you mentioned plush Cthulhu slippers, and here you are, you're a Lovecraftian scholar. Okay. Do you have plush Cthulhu slippers?
I don't have plush Cthulhu slippers, but I do have plush Cthulhus.
Okay. That was the part B of my question. Is like, do you have any doodads or knickknacks? Do you find any cute? And I have them too. So you know, look,
My
here's
plushie
a
was a gift.
replica
That's what I'm
Clark
going to say.
Ashton Smith sculpture. You know, we all have we all have little. No matter how serious we are, I think that's healthy that you go, oh, look at that cute little, you know, whatever. I don't say Cthulhu because I don't think Cthulhu's cute. I'm not a Cthulhu fan, but just wondered if you were.
I do have, actually my favorite Lovecraftian thing is a pendant that my husband got me. It is a coin from the universe that existed in Neil Gaiman's A Study in Emerald. So he
Oh,
has
okay.
the queen on the coin, but the queen, of course, it looks very much like Cthulhu, because A Study in Emerald is one of my great favorite stories, and I think Lovecraft would have been fascinated by that because he was also a Holmesian and he loved Sherlock Holmes quite a bit. So seeing what that would have looked like, what Holmes would look like in a world out of Call of Cthulhu, I think he would have approved. And I don't think he'd begrudge me the necklace. I hope he wouldn't.
No, I don't think he would.
To get back to where I was going before,
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
he was reacting to a writer named U.B. Cave, who wrote a couple of mainstream horror stories using some of his creations in a totally incorrect context. And he said, well, he misused my concepts, but I appreciate the publicity anyway.
There you go.
Nice.
Okay. Well, this course, I linked to it. If you're watching later, there's a link in the YouTube video right below the video. If you're watching on the website, the post today is where I linked to the course. And how can they Google it? What's the quickest way to Google it? Mythgard, Literary Copernicus?
Yes, Mythgard, Literary Copernicus, or Mythgard Lovecraft.
Okay.
Just know that Mythgard is G-A-R-D. It's all one word, Mythgard. No U and there's no E.
And the course starts when and ends when?
It starts on May 5th. So you have May 4th free to celebrate Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And then it starts on May 5th, and it runs concurrently for 12 weeks. So you're done before August.
And we're promoting Star Wars during Avengers Week? Oh.
What can I say?
I'm looking forward to Star Wars too, you know. Just each in their time.
Chewie, we're home.
Fair enough. Too soon, I understand.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for being on the show. This course sounds fascinating, it really does.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and it's been a delight and a privilege to get to speak with all of you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, thank you. We're going to do our thing now where we talk about more Lovecraft stuff that's coming up, and you're welcome to stay or take off.
Before you leave,
Yeah, go ahead.
this is what the Necronomicon in Providence is all about.
Yeah.
You would be a great addition, you know.
Thank you.
South Carolina in the summer, trust me, I've been there many times. It's way too damn hot. Plus, you get to see Lovecraft's New England again. How could you not want to do that?
Oh.
Well, if you can't make it, the next one's August 2017, you know.
2017, yeah.
So.
I'm gonna have
as
to.
a good academic, we know you have a great calendar. It's easy to write in.
Not that Joe's pressuring you or anything. But yeah, you would be absolutely awesome. Joe's right, you'd be absolutely awesome on some panels at Necronomicon. So.
Oh, thank you so much. I would love to be a part of it. So thank you very much.
All right.
Mike and I have connections, so when people start bugging you, don't blame us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's true. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Speaking of Necronomicon, looks like they posted. She is really. That's awesome. She's awesome. She's very knowledgeable too.
And you know what? Not only was she good, but you know what? All we keep hearing about, we don't have enough women. We certainly could use more scholarship. Well, geez, she raised a lot of good points. She's friendly, witty, intelligent. Fits
Oh.
the female part, fits the scholar part.
Niels is the boss, but
Great
maybe
edition.
we'll extend her an invitation for 2017, so we can
Yeah.
suggest.
Yeah, we can start sitting
I
on
have a
shoulders
feeling if
and
you got an
whispering
invitation,
in
she'll
ears.
probably accept. So.
Mm. So are
Okay.
we grilling Rick now?
Yeah, let's grow Rick. Let's grow Rick now. Good point.
I mean, is he going to
Chicago.
tell us all about Chicago and all the bars he was in and stuff?
Yeah, I'm sure he was.
Oh, I was hanging out in art gallery.
Well, you went to the
that's what they
Chicago
call
Pulp
it. Is
No,
that
Festival,
what they
right?
call them now?
This is the Windy City Pulp Convention program.
Ho, ho, ho. Nice.
And some dealers offer this. You get articles on Lovecraft by F. Paul Wilson, Robert Weinberg, Stephen Jones, Will Murray, and S.T. Joshi.
Huh?
A
Cool.
lot of reprints in there.
Mhm.
Like Will Murray's article was a very rare one called The Call of Kaluru, which is about how A. Merritt created an octopus god like Cthulhu under Lovecraft's influence, obviously.
So was the Lovecraftian 125th birthday, it was a big kind of presence there, or just part of it?
Well, there was an art show.
Right.
And I got to see one thing I never expected to see in my life. This is what the pulp cover looked like.
Oh,
The original painting for the cover of Astounding Stories for Shadow
Yeah.
Eye,
Yeah.
which they had. It's owned by Doug Ellis, who runs the Windy City Pulp Convention. And there was a little interesting story about that. And one of the guests there was Stuart David Shift,
Uh-huh.
who edited the Whispers anthologies.
Right.
And he is a phenomenal Lovecraft collector. And he had tried to buy that painting some years ago at an auction, but was outbid when it sold for something like $55,000.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, Doug Ellis bought it from the guy who won that auction. And I don't know what the price was, but it was sort of very hefty. And originally, Doug did not want to pay for it because it was well, he wanted it, but he said, my wife is never going to go with this. It's too high. And his wife looked at him and said, no, it's worth it, buy it.
Oh.
There you
Now,
go.
you didn't steal this painting while you were there or anything, did you?
No, but I
That's what
wanted
you got
to.
Yes.
You
Howard Brown was the artist, by the way.
I could understand why you would want to.
The other thing that was there, see, I saw two things I never expected to see in my life. That painting, and the other thing that in the room, there was a lot of great artwork. We'll go into that in a moment. But I actually saw finally a copy of The Outsider and Others from Arkham House.
Oh, wow.
I think it was Robert Weinberg's copy. And he gave a little interesting chat on collecting Lovecraft with Mr. Shift and Stephen Jones. And Robert Weinberg was saying when he was reading Lovecraft, now he's probably about 10 years older than you and me, Joe.
Uh-huh.
He was saying that he first was reading Lovecraft in the libraries, and somehow The Outsider and Others disappeared from every library shelf in Chicago. He would find it in catalogs, go to look it up, it's not there. So somebody was stealing them from the libraries.
Wow.
Or multiple people were stealing them from the libraries. That was like the book that got checked out that was never returned.
Yeah, I saw some of that art. Somebody posted, I don't remember the name, but somebody posted some pictures from the pulp convention with a bunch of Lovecraft art. And there was some Gay and Wilson, too.
Yes.
Right?
And, well, I don't have Gay and Wilson, but I have It's going to be like an episode of Night Gallery almost. They have a painting with a story. This is just a shot of it.
Oh, wow.
That's Lee Brown Coy. Rats in the Walls. It was for an anthology called Sleep No More, which I think came out in the 50s from Arkham House. Show that again.
That's great.
And the story here that Stuart David Schiff told, because he owns the drawing, is that when Coy first painted it, he sold it like right away to somebody, and that person took it home, and his wife looked at it and said, either that painting goes or I go. So the collector had to give it back to Coy. Coy then sold it to another collector who took it home, and his wife looked at it and said, well, you can keep it, but shove it in a cabinet and never take it out, because I don't want to see that ugly thing ever again.
Wow.
And it stayed there for, I guess, 20 years or so.
You see the importance of a man cave, right?
Then eventually the collector passed away, and Mr. Schiff went to get it. I mean, to buy it, and the guy's wife didn't even want to touch it. She said, you know, here's the key to the cabinet. Go and take it out and scurry it away.
Wow.
But Mike, I don't think nowadays we should call them man caves. We got so many women who are into this kind of stuff too. I think we should call them geek spots.
There you go.
No matter what our plumbing is, we're all geeks.
I call mine the office, but yeah.
Well, mine's the Nightmarian, so.
It's a not for the squeamish cave.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because the thing with this drawing is, I mean, it looks like a rat's chewing out a guy's eye. So.
Oh yeah. I personally would not want to touch it. I don't like rats. If there's rats on the page of a book, I go to the very tiniest corner and flip the page. I don't like rats.
I've heard.
This is the man who wrote a backstory involving Edgar Allan Poe was the Cthulhu mythos.
Okay, so I wrote I actually wrote two sequels to a sequel to the Rats in the Wall and a Poe Lovecraft rats thing, yeah. Well, we're supposed to write about what bothers us, right?
Right.
Rats bother me. You know?
Well, rats are frightening. That is true.
Remember that scene in Angel, Rick, fourth season, where him and Fred are in the tunnels and they hear something and she's like, oh, it's probably just rats. And he goes, now what'd you have to go and say that for? And she goes, sorry, it's probably some demon or some monster or creature, but definitely not rats.
Well, remember, Indiana Jones's father hated rats rather than snakes.
Yeah.
I was walking across one of those little bridges in Providence with Brian Lumley, and he was telling me Arkham House stories, and a rat comes up out of the bushes from down by the water. Right. It almost stepped right on his toe, and I froze and jumped back. And he just keeps walking and talking, and like 2-3 seconds later, he realized I wasn't there, and he turned around and gave me this kind of dumbfounded look, and he's like, "What's the matter? Are you coming?" And I'm still like, "Where the hell did that rat go? Oh my God, holy shit!" And I'm like, "Didn't you see that? Did you see what?" I mean, this thing was like the size of a small dog, for Christ's sakes. No, I don't like rats.
Every time I hear the story, too.
Well, I think if we also saw a rat in our house, we freak out. You know?
Yeah, it's not something you want to see, especially in your house.
Right.
So you had a great time up there then?
Yeah, it was a great time. I mean, it just wasn't celebrating Lovecraft. They were going into things like Street and Smith comic adaptations of The Shadow and Doc Savage. And you gave me an assignment, Joe. You wanted to know what was going on with the Doc Savage movie.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And it's being held up by their inability to sign a star.
Oh, really?
Now, that may be Christopher Hemsworth. It may end up being The Rock. Who knows? But they got to find some
You know, I got
appropriate
nothing
actor.
against The Rock, but I don't want The Rock to be Doc Savage. Chris Helmsworth, maybe.
Yeah, Chris Helmsworth.
Am I wrong? Because it's been so long now. But isn't it the guy who was behind The Rocketeer that's the Doc Savage guy on this?
No, it's the guy who directed Iron Man 3, Shane Black.
Oh, okay, okay.
And if you look very carefully at Iron Man 3, in the scene where Tony Stark doesn't have his armor and has to take out the bad guys, he's operating like Doc Savage. He's got all these little gas bombs that roll on the ground and things.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was the point in the movie. That was the point in the movie where Logan whispers over to me, "Daddy's trying to be Batman."
Well, Batman borrowed. Doc Savage had a utility belt before Batman.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, I know.
It started out as a utility vest, but it was a belt in 2 stories.
And how much did Batman borrow from the Shadow?
Oh, I don't deny it. Yeah, and the Shadow is very cool. By the way, we're giving away that course in a few minutes for everybody watching. So.
Cool. Well, thanks. Yeah, that must have been neat seeing that stuff.
Yeah, that looks like a really interesting convention, book convention.
Oh, I'm sure that'd be a gas.
Yeah.
You know.
All right, so we got some really cool Lovecraftian books and weird fiction books coming up. First of all, William Meikle's The Dunfield Terror I've read that. I really enjoyed that. So check that out. It's sort of a, well, I'm not gonna say anything about it, but it's set in winter. I don't want to give away any plot points, and I really liked the way I got into it right away. It was a very easy read, and I mean that in a good way. It's a very fun read.
It's not a Carnacki or Sherlock Holmes story.
No, it's a Lovecraftian book.
Right. Well, some of his Carnacki stuff is Lovecraft.
Yeah, but no, it is not that.
He's famous for his 2 theories. That's all.
Yeah. Sometimes you read a Lovecraftian book, and you're into these really, and it's it's really dark and heavy, and I'm not saying this right, but sometimes you read it and it's still a horror book, and it's not a comedy horror, but it's just a hell of a fun read, and that's what this was. I really enjoyed it. He Who Walks in Shadow by Brett Talley, that's coming out soon. I think it's next month. I'm reading it now. I'm really enjoying it. If you guys remember, he's the guy that wrote That Which Should Not Be, right, which is high on my list of Lovecraftian books.
Any little hints about what the new novel has in it? Spoilers.
I'm about a tenth of a way into it yet, so I'm still kind of assimilating it. But it's the same kind of book as That Which Should Not Be. I enjoyed the hell out of it, and I'm liking this so far a lot.
Would you say it's
the audience aware of it?
The earlier book was sort of gothic Lovecraft, sort of Bram Stoker meets Lovecraft is one way to describe it, or Bram Stoker and Algernon Blackwood meet Lovecraft, even though Blackwood influenced Lovecraft, I guess. So.
Yeah. And I really liked him stopping at the inn and the interior stories, so to speak. But anyway, that's coming out. Then there's this book that was supposed to come out next month, and it just came out this weekend, apparently.
Snuck out early.
A House of Hollow Wounds by, I don't remember who it's by.
By me.
By Joe
Oh,
Pulver, yes. Thank
oh,
you.
it finally came out this weekend?
Yep.
Because I ordered it, so I should be getting it in the mail soon.
Yeah.
I hear pre-orders were shipped.
Good.
Yep. So there's some Poe, there's some Caligari, there's some Lovecraft. There might be some King in Yellow, you know. Who knows? Ghouls and Tesla robots, and it was edited by Jeff Thomas.
Yes, and we're going to do a show with both of you guys on May 31st and talk about the book
You
and other things.
know, it's from Hippocampus Press, like my last three collections. Like my last three collections, there's some Lovecraft, there's some Chambers, and there's a lot of weird fiction.
So again, it's called A House of Hollow Wounds by Joseph S. Pulver Sr.
It's got a really cool cover.
Lovecraft eZine page. I linked to it yesterday or the day before, something like that. Scroll down. What, Joe?
I said it's got a really cool cover.
Yeah. Yeah. That was Daniel Sierra again, right?
Yep, Danny Sarah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think at this point everybody knows how much I love that guy's work. So
it's a good fit for you, you know.
Yeah, he does. He's magnificent, and he's got those autumnal colors, and it could be a good Legati cover actually.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Joe Pulver, we've been talking about the King in Yellow Tells Volume 1 for a long time now. And now, for those of you who keep asking me, thanks for doing so, we are at the point where I am now, when you get to the point where you're looking at a print proof, which is on its way in the mail to me, that means we are almost done. And my approximate target goal, easy for me to keep in mind, is around plus or minus a few days of May 11th, my birthday, at which point I will turn 28 years old.
Yeah.
But anyway, the short version is somewhere around May 11th or so, this book should be available, barring anything massively unforeseen, which I don't think is going to happen. But we are very close on this King in Yellow Tells book. The other thing to realize about this book is that we haven't really said this before, but this is a big book. There's a lot of tales and a lot of stories in this book. All King in Yellow. So.
Yeah, well, I've never sat down and put them all together before. I didn't realize how thick this was going to be.
Oh, it's a good thing. I'm just saying you're going to get a lot.
Well, it's only volume 1.
Right.
I mean, between A House of Hollow Wounds and some other things that are sold but not released yet, we got quite a bit of stuff towards a volume 2 at some point. I mean, that'll be at least a year because,
right.
But
I will have it available in print and Kindle whichever is your preference, you can buy it that way. So.
And it looks cool. Steve Santiago did a great cover.
Mm-hmm.
Ken and Leslie, who've been working behind the scenes to make the book, design the book, been doing a great job. So, looks pretty cool.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll be like Willow. I got 2 books out.
Well, and just for the audience sake, real quick, but I said to Joe, since Derek at Hippocampus put this out sooner than we thought, should I delay this book? And they're 2 very different animals. I think, according to Joe, there's like maybe 1 or 2 stories at most, King in Yellow stories in The House of Hollow Wounds. It's a weird fiction book. It's a different animal. So.
Yeah, there's
right?
a lot less King in Yellow. Well, with every collection of mine, there's been less King in Yellow material. I mean, Blood Will Have Its Season had a lot. Sin and Ashes less. Portraits of Ruin less. This one less.
Right. Joe writes weird fiction is the best way to put it. but I said to Joe a while back, you're known for King in Yellow, huge, so let's put them all together. So that's what we're doing.
And that's what it is. This is nothing but King in Yellow stories.
And it's got a foreword, or introduction, I beg your pardon. It's got an introduction by Rick, and an afterward by Pete Rollick. So,
yep,
the group effort. And that was a very informative introduction, Rick.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love the introduction. Thanks, Rick. Really good job.
W.H. Pugmire, he's got a new book out, which I think is sort of a companion piece to, I can't think of anything right now. What's the one? Oh, the Revenant of Rebecca Pascal.
Yeah, with David Barker.
With David Barker. Well, he's got a new David Barker book out, or at least it's about to come out. I think it's out now.
I think it was. I think there were copies in Portland this weekend.
Okay. Well, I'm dropping the ball because I'm trying to remember the name of the book. Oh, I got it here. It is. Give me 1 second. In the Gulfs of Dream and Other Lovecraftian Tales by David Barker and W.H. Pugmire. Essentially, if you like The Revenant of Rebecca Pascal, which I loved it, I really did. It looks, looks like you'll like this. So,
who was the publisher?
Dark Renaissance.
Okay.
So
inside the U.S. as well.
And in other coming attractions,
mm-hmm.
I'm now working on the table of contents for Casilda's song. I have all the pieces in hand, and now I'm trying to figure out what order they go in.
Someone on Twitter asked you when it's coming out.
What? Casilda's song?
Yeah.
It's going to be a couple months yet. Like I said,
Oh, it's that soon? I didn't realize it was that soon. Okay.
Yeah, it's soon enough. I have all the pieces. I just have to figure out what order they go in. I mean,
okay.
I'll spend at least a week trying to get the flow. What goes with what follows this, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But no, it's like I said. All the contributors have turned in their stories. They've been accepted. I'm excited. I think King in Yellow fans will really enjoy this.
And then last, I'm going to just say this real quick, but Autumn Cthulhu, I'm really blown away by the stories I've got. I'm still waiting on a final few, but this, and I'm not pumping myself up here, I'm pumping up the authors and the stories I've been given, but this is going to be something else. I think people are really going to enjoy Autumn Cthulhu. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
What are the essays coming out?
Let's just say I'm waiting on quite a few.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to decide what format this comes out in. It may be just something smaller, but what I decided to do was, okay, I'll give those people I'm waiting on some time, since I've got these projects in front of me now anyway. So I would have to guess 6 or 8 months, and we'll get those out. So, but it's still on the list, to answer your question, right? And sometimes that happens, There's a movie called The Last Case of August T. Harrison. If you Google that, plus YouTube, The Last Case of August T. Harrison, you can see a trailer for it. It's about this retired private detective, and it's a Lovecraftian story. And I just got sent the movie to preview. I'm liking it so far. So I'll keep you guys posted on that too. But this could be a good one. I'll reserve judgment till I'm finished watching it, but it's good so far. So
Cool.
Shall we plug Dark Adventures Theater?
yeah, go right ahead.
In Prison with the Pharaohs. Which
How is it? Did you listen to it?
I liked it overall, but I think it didn't do justice to Lovecraft's conclusion of the story. That's all I'm going to say. They
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
omitted something.
Okay.
I didn't mind. They actually threw in a lot of additions, but I didn't mind those. Those were fine. I just felt at the end, I said, how could you not have that in the story? And that's all I'm going to say. Otherwise, the acting was fine. The music was wonderful as always. But
Didn't they just release another one right before this in close succession? Well, I forget the story.
Dreams in the Witch House was the one that came out just before.
Oh, was that the last one? I thought there was another one. Okay. Never mind.
But this is the only one I really had a really significant criticism of. Everything else I've loved without any reservations.
Okay. Well, they do good work.
It's still worth owning. I just said I felt a little disappointed by how it ended. That's how I felt.
If you are going to Necronomicon in August, of course I'll be recording stuff and live streaming some stuff and posting pictures and all that good stuff for everybody that can't be there. So hopefully I can give you a big flavor of it if you can't be there. If you are going and you've got a even halfway decent video camera, you're there to enjoy the convention. I'm not looking for people to be constantly filming. But I could use just a little bit of extra help when I can't be in two places at once. So if anybody is interested in helping out and you are going to Necronomicon, just email me, Lovecraft eZine, eZine @gmail.com. Maybe think about it. They're some of these are going to change, but they posted the panelists for Necronomicon. Joe and I were talking about it earlier this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm on 6.
Rick, you're on. Let's see. Chambers and the King in Yellow with Joe.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask for anything else.
Well, you're on something called the Little Terrors.
Oh, really? I'm on something else. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll take 2.
Okay, Once Upon a Time back in the Mists of Forgotten Ages is perfect for you. There was these things.
Oh.
There were these things called pulp and fanzines. These low-budget publications provided the market for the first sales by writers like Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, Clark Ashton Smith, and others, and so on. It's about pulp writing.
Oh, Rick might be able to talk about that just a little bit, for a minute maybe.
Yeah, he's okay. You come to me if you need any help, Rick.
Yeah. We could take a pen and write a couple of crib notes on his hand in case he, needs a couple key things to say.
I've also got to refresh my memory on things like the Fantasy Fan and Marvel Tales and other publications that sort. Because my main association with the fanzine is from the 70s and 80s.
And Rick, on our King in Yellow panel, I've been contacted by the fine people who make Lovecraft wines. And one of their wines is called the Pallid Mask.
Oh, that's what you were talking about.
We may be drinking bottles of fine grape at our panel.
Okay.
We will see.
Somebody posted on the message board yesterday or today, they're like, if I'm not like a Lovecraft expert or whatnot, will I enjoy this convention? The answer is, it's not for love, it's for everybody. People that are that live and breathe it, and people that are just interested. And so the answer is yeah. There's
Yeah,
all
I
kinds of stuff.
actually replied to that.
Yeah.
Creators, readers, fans, gamers, it doesn't matter what your stripe is here. Pick your flavor. I come one, come all. If you enjoy this stuff, you're going to have fun. There's plenty to do. There's plenty to see. I agree with Mike.
Let's see.
I mean, let's go back and look at it. Whether it's the creators or the vendors or the fans, everybody last time had a great time. Everybody.
Yep.
And
Oh, by the way,
this one's going to be bigger and
yeah, go
better.
ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, it's bigger and it's better. Rick's going to be there. What else you got to know?
That's all you got to know.
Well, we know from a posting on the message board this week that Joe is the real big star of this show.
Oh, yeah, Joe, yeah.
That's right.
Can I get a Mike Davis? He's a pretty big guy.
Well,
That's it.
speaking of real stars, not me, Niels.
Niels is the man.
I texted Niels. He's going to be on sometime on the show, probably sometime in June, after they've solidified a few more things, so that he can tell everybody all the cool stuff that's going to be going on at Necronomicon, August 20 through 23. So he'll be on. For those that don't know, Niels is the organizer of the convention. So.
And everybody out there, say prayers for Niels, because not only was he busy, but I think we keep him busier with our emails and questions and, hey, is this okay? Can I do this? Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
There's a guy come the beginning of September who's really going to need a vacation.
I'm on a small press publishing panel with several other people. Let's see. Well, I'm on 5 or 6 panels. It's not final. I had to change a couple things. And you're on, what, 8, Joe?
I'm on Chambers, King in Yellow. I'm on the Creating Anthologies panel. I'm on the Future Weird Fiction panel. I'm on the What is New Weird Fiction panel. I'm on the Roots of the Influences to HPL. I'm the Chambers guy on that. I say things for 2 minutes and shut up. And I'm on the Writing Lovecraftian Fiction panel.
Yeah, the Writing Mythos panel, and I'm moderating that, so I can tell you to shut up, and tell Ramsey Campbell to shut up, Laird, Pete.
Yeah, you tell the 3 of us to shut up and do it. You go ahead, tell the Honey Badger, just him. I want you to, and if
Honey
you don't
Badger?
tell him to shut up, I'm gonna elbow him and go. You know, months ago, Mike kept saying he was going to tell you to shut up. What are you going to do about that?
You'll forget.
Is Cody on any of these panels with you?
With me, I don't think so. Is he going? I don't think he's going.
Oh, he's not going.
I don't know if he's going. I don't see him on any panels.
Oh, I just assumed Cody was going. That'll be a bummer.
I mean, you know.
I know I'm extremely unhappy because I've heard that Mr. Kelly Young will not be attending.
No, unfortunately.
He apparently has a wedding. He's the best man, so. But he'll be a loss on the King in Yellow panel. Pete's on a whole bunch of panels.
So, I posted this earlier too in the week, but you know we're gonna do our best to do like a Lovecraft eZine get together either Friday or Saturday night, like like a bar a block away or something. Lovecraft eZine readers and viewers can chat with each other and so forth. So I'll know more soon. I just don't want to schedule it around something that everybody would rather be at. So when I know more about the schedule, I'll do that. All right.
Well, that ought to bring the Providence Police Department out.
Oh, yeah. Probably. All right. Did we cover everything?
I guess we probably did.
Yep.
Well, go ahead, Rick. What?
We covered everything.
I hope to see Dr. Amy Sturgis at Necronomicon in 2017 because
yeah, I think she'd be a great
could be a lot.
addition, and I'm certainly going to mention her to Niels.
Yeah, me too. I'll wait till after August to mention her.
Well, yeah, but yeah, she'd be a great addition.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a big prize and a medium prize and two small, whatever you want to call them. This huge $175 prize, which is very nice of Dr. Sturgis to offer. This sounds like a hell of a course, and it does sound very much worth the money. But one lucky winner is going to get it for free. So let's start with that because I don't want any mix-ups. If you want the course, send an email to Lovecraft eZine prizes at gmail.com. Lovecraft eZine prizes at gmail.com, and please put Lovecraft course in the subject. We'll keep it easy. Whatever you want to say in the email, like offer Joe Pulver money if he'll pick you, stuff like that.
Oh, hey, there's something we could talk about too before we leave. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, anyway, so there's that. The other two prizes are the C is for Cthulhu thing that Matthew's going to give away to somebody, and the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society's, that's that song CD, isn't it? Shanties? Something like that. It's pretty cool, I know that. Just put whichever one you want in the subject, and of course, as always, all kidding aside, I used random.org to pick the winners, and I'll do that probably about an hour at most after the show ends, something like that. I'll email the winners, and I'll post the winners' names on the message board. So, Joe, what did you want to say?
Oh, we're updating my website like crazy, thisyellowmadness.blogspot.com, and one of the things we decided is...
Actually, it's this. No, wait a minute. All they got to do is go to www.thisyellowmadness.com.
Okay, thisyellowmadness.com, and we've added a donate button. So if anybody finds a quarter in their sofa and they don't want it, they can donate it to Joe Pulver.
It goes to your WordPress site, right? Not to Blogspot.
Yeah, WordPress. That's what I meant. Yeah, WordPress. That's the one.
Okay. But anyway, all you got to remember is go to thisyellowmadness.com. It'll forward to the proper place.
Okay.
I see it. Make a donation on the right side.
We're updating the site, trying to, get it, fix it. And like I said, one of the things with everybody doing all they're doing via social media, it's like, hey, let's put a donate button on. So.
Now, how much did you update, and how much did your lovely wife update?
I don't know how to do this tech stuff. I just go, this needs to be fixed. That just came out. This is going to be here. That's that. I don't know how this tech stuff works. But everybody's doing this Patreon stuff. So. Only I don't write enough to secretly release stuff every month.
The alternate to that is a lot of people are doing something called GoFundMe. Bob did that to help with house repairs.
Yeah, well, I just thought, hey, why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes when you're cleaning house, you find 37 cents in your chair, and you don't want to bother with it, so give it to the old guy.
All right. Well, guest list. Last thing I want to say is that there were a hell of a lot of suggestions given to me, really great suggestions when I asked on the message board about future topics and shows, and I've saved that. I'm almost all of those, let's say 90% of those will happen. I'm hoping. Next week, Sean Hode, author of Deadtown Abbey. The week after that, Sam Gafford and Jason Eckhart, they're working on a really cool Lovecraftian graphic novel. They just found a publisher for. I think it was PS Publishing, wasn't it? So, and I'll keep adding to that. I list the authors on the watch page at the site where it says live web series. So, all right. Well, thanks guys, and thanks to everybody who watched. Appreciate it. And I hope to see, well, we'll see you all next week, and I hope to see a lot of you guys at Necronomicon, because we'll be there, right, guys?
Yep.
So, all right. Rick, I got to ask you something after the show. And Joe.
Okay, sure.
Thanks for watching, everybody. And we'll pick the winners in a little bit.